Well, hello, Monroe, France.
Hi, Jessica Stern. Great to see you.
Great to see you. I feel suddenly really excited and a little bit nervous, like, you know, in on a secret.
It's all love. It's all love. We're good.
Hi everyone. I'm Jessica Stern. I'm the executive director of OutRight Action International. And this is my second episode of OutRight TV. So I wanted to interview someone incredibly smart, incredibly political, and with style to boot. So of course, that led me to Monroe, France.
My heart warms.
Um, and I have had the great pleasure of knowing you, Monroe, since 10, 15 years.
Yes, it's been at least 15 years. Yes, for sure. Yeah. Maybe even a little bit longer, but yes, at least 15 years. Yeah.
Since we were 12.
Yes.
And in that time, we've connected in many different ways, including when you were on the board of directors of OutRight, which is one of many leadership roles that you've played in your life. What is your day job, Monroe? And where are you calling from right now?
Oh, not a problem. So, my day job, where I spend most of my time, is at New York University, and I'm one of the associate vice presidents in our Office of Global Inclusion, Diversity, and Strategic Innovation. And so, in my role, I'm responsible for both internal and external partnerships. And also helping to advance strategically across all of our campuses, so across all the globe, our inclusive leadership programs for staff, faculty, and students, and also then helping to provide consultation across our schools and our units to ensure that our staff and faculty and students feel a greater sense of inclusivity. And then the other part of my role is working with our alumni community as well. And so I literally get the opportunity to work across all of our different communities and constituency groups to do the work of diversity, inclusion, belonging, and innovation within the Office of Global Inclusion. And so right now I'm at home. I'm at home in Brooklyn in Bed-Stuy, boogie down Bed-Stuy. So zooming in from there.
Great, excellent. And I do just have to ask the question, since you have just described this very impressive CV, a person of a lot of responsibility, and they can already see the fashion.
Yeah.
Are you single?
Yes, I am single, fully single. Full
There.
on single with a capital S.
Let's see if OutRight TV can become OutRight Love Connection.
Yes, right. Yes. Let's see what happens.
Well, I wanted to interview you for a number of reasons, but one of them is that you shared something really important to me, which is just before your birthday, which was just a few days ago, and happy birthday again. You had a life-changing experience. You actually got sick with COVID.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
I'm so sorry to hear that because of how incredibly frightening that is.
Mm.
We also talked a little bit about what it felt like and what it felt like to be a person who's currently single and
Yes.
currently living alone while being so sick. So could you tell us what that was like?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so, as many of us, there were a lot of us live very full lives. I had just finished coming off of a whole like series of different domestic and international travels, right? Abu Dhabi, Hawaii, Boston, some other places. And then this all unraveled, right? And so my life fully slowed down. In the midst of that slowing down, I started to feel a bit ill early March, just as we went into shelter at home. And I thought that it was allergies because I suffer rurally from allergies. And I know some of the symptoms can read very much like the same symptoms with allergies. And oftentimes I forget that. And I think maybe I'm coming down with the flu during allergy season, it's the height of allergy season. So I kind of started to chalk it up to that. And, I told my colleagues and friends that I feel like I'm having a significant allergy, moment. And then as time progressed, I realized, wait, some of these symptoms are very different than what I'm accustomed to. So for example, a mild grade, low grade fever, which I ended up having for over 2.5 weeks. And then aches like significant body aches from headaches, which were very severe, severe, that then also became earaches to overall body aches. And so between those symptoms, I finally decided that something else was going on. And I made a contact to my doctor, who happens to also be an infectious disease specialist, which is great. He was very generous right away, got on number of virtual visits with me. And it was scary because, at that time, there were so many unknown factors, and, you were hearing how many people were beginning to pass away. And at that time, a lot of course, the narrative was that, it was perniciously impacting, elderly people and folks with underlying medical conditions. And I have a couple of those. And so at that time, the unknown, what does this now mean if I am sick for this period of time living alone? And how do I navigate getting my needs met and things that I need, and access to medicine, like as I needed them, to even things such as Gatorade, right, to stay hydrated. And so it was a bit scary. I will say that, I am of lots of privilege in that fact that I have a wonderful home to be in with many different rooms. I have a loving cat that was happy to have me at home, and also access to many financial resources, right? But that also said, that meant nothing if I couldn't utilize those resources to get my needs met in the moment of being sick, right? And so having to figure all that out, and I couldn't get a lot of deliveries to my place in Bed-Stuy.
I think there's something really powerful about that. I mean, there's a number of points that you raised. I mean, one is that even with the relative privilege that you enjoy, living alone, there were just certain ways where you felt worried about your ability to provide for yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think you're also underscoring the severity of this disease, and how when it comes for you, simple things like ensuring that you have Gatorade, which is a no-brainer ordinarily, suddenly becomes quite a frightening prospect.
Mm-hmm.
And as many people in our community have underlying health issues, there's also a fear level that comes with getting COVID, because that you're at risk for getting sicker.
Right, exactly. That's exactly it. And so that that fear of the getting sicker, and then starting to worry that okay, what would it mean to go for me? I was scared, beyond belief, about the possibility of going to the hospital. And at one point, my doctor, as a matter of fact, the same day that I was supposed to go get tested, but I was too ill to leave the house, and I also didn't want to expose others in my need to get to the hospital, right? So whether it was an Uber driver, certainly I was not going to ask a loved one or a friend to take me. So again, it was one of those moments. How do I navigate this? If you have a partner and you have a car, maybe your partner will take you because this is what you do when you're in a partnership. But I didn't have that situation, and I don't have my own vehicle at this time. And so that how do I get to the hospital? But also I didn't want to go to the hospital because of fear of it being a death sentence, right? And so I talked that through with my doctor on the day I was supposed to go, because that's when I had the peak of my symptoms, when I did have a day to get tested. And I was really fearful of what would that mean. And as we all know, going into the hospital with COVID, or at this time in general, you must go by yourself without having access of a loved one joining you. And so that just created, even for me, even more fear, given all the other medical conditions that, some of the medical other complications that I have already pre-existing. Yeah.
Well, there's something that you and I talked about before, which is that that one of the gifts of being queer is, we choose our own families. And I know you have a lot of chosen family.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, you have people that love you everywhere. And I mean, your family may not be blood related. Some of it is, but your definition of family goes much bigger and is incredibly strong and shows up for you. And so, I'm sort of juxtaposing that with what it has meant to be a single gay man. And how you've been able to sort of nurture your desire for family in ways that are perceived by the mainstream as sort of non-traditional, right?
Yeah.
And when I think about that, that's part of what that's part of what I think of as like the distinctly queer impact of COVID. A lot of us choose to organize our families differently. A lot of gay men that I know specifically choose to be single.
Yes.
Right? And they have very vibrant, loving, positive sex lives,
Right.
positive friendship family, you know, and they're good. But
Yeah.
in this environment is hard. And so I guess I just wanted to ask you a little bit about what was distinctly queer about your experience.
Sure. Yeah. So I would say the piece that was distinctively queer was this, like, the how do you create family, right? And being able to call on that family. And in my way of being single and queer, have all these beautiful relationships, all this chosen family, right, that live here in the city as well, or nearby, who are able to be supportive. But even in the midst of that, you know, like a lot of us like do, is that I am also very, because I've learned to be so independent, right? I've
Yeah.
learned to be a trailblazer and to pave a way for myself. And so even in the midst of the illness, right, like the resistance of this internal resistance of a pride, whatever you want to call it, of like deciding to reach out to friends to ask them, like to like deliver groceries, to go pick, and these are literal things I had to ask folks to do, to go pick up my meds from the pharmacy because I could not get them delivered into time that I needed them, to help some of my illness. The like, you know, the multiple, like, you know, the multiple runs to the pharmacy and the like the market that people had to do, and then calling on different people to do different things for me, even to the extent of, you know, I needed Tylenol one day because my fever was so intense that I could not go on without it, right? And so those are the ways in which that this like claiming family in a different kind of way, but also recognizing like that family exists in the moment you need it, right? Because, you know, creating it in a different way when it's time around joy and celebration is one thing, but in a time in which that, you know, we're in a pandemic where, you know that folks going into a market for you, people going into a pharmacy for you, when we were told to shelter at home, they're putting their own safety in jeopardy. And so that's where you have to really say, and you really start to ask yourself, like, you know, what does it mean to really be family? Like,
Mm,
if you're not blood, or even if you're my cousin, what does that really mean, right? Because I'm asking you in this moment, you know, to, you know, show up in a way in which that means that, like, you know, this relationship is real in the most, like, you know, in the most pivotal moments. And then the other piece around single and queerness, I would say, you know, where even those folks can't help. When you're sick, and, you know, you can't, like, you know, there are only so many times you can call for deliveries for food, or you don't want to go downstairs for deliveries of food, or it was very limited. I still had to get my butt out of bed and cook meals. And then after I cook those meals, how do I like wash the dishes? Like, one of the things I would say to people in the midst of all of this, make sure you have a lot of clean linen and like tiles, because those are things that, you know, I had to call. I had a laundry, like, you know, and this is where you build relationships in your community, because I had a laundry that was in the laundromat that I had not picked up yet that included lots of my linen. I called them and told them of my condition because I had built a relationship with them. And this is the way, again, queerness shows up. You know, we have to think about community, like organizing in community and creating relationships in community. They were willing to deliver my, like, you know, come drop it off, literally the manager walked from the laundry to deliver it to my like doorstep, you know, and it was heavy. It was not light. It was like 2 big bags because, you know, I have a lot of stuff. And so that was very beautiful, right? And so finding those beautiful moments, but, you know, that's where the piece around queer and single, I had to still get up and wash my dishes, clean the bathroom, like, you know, clean the linens and all those things on my own.
you haven't managed to train that bossy cat to do it for
Nope.
you?
I mean, I think she's a little too much of a diva to do that.
Diva
Yeah.
cats, we all love. I mean, actually, you know, what's inspiring about what you just said is that family exists when you need it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you had all kinds of family showing up for you. And I think like these are the moments that test us.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we know about the pandemic is that a lot of queer people are going to be shut out of traditional resource distribution chains, right? If the government does something, you know, and you don't have the right identification because you're trans, you're not going to be welcome.
Yeah.
You know, if people are getting food relief from their local religious organization and
Yeah.
you're you know, in a way that's seen as non-traditional to that faith group, then you don't get the food distribution. And so it's a reminder that, you know, queer people often have to depend on the networks that we've created for ourselves because the traditional ones aren't there.
Yes, this is so very true. Yeah, no, you know, and this is where, you know, you have to check in on each other, right? I mean, I would say you know, and I made an intentional choice. I will after we like, you know, decide to air this, but I made an intentional choice throughout my process of being ill and throughout the process of healing. And I'm about 85, 90%, the fatigue is still there, but I made a choice to not put it out on public social media. And like, you know, and I did share with like those that were very close chosen family. And then as people checked in with me, I shared. And so but the importance of, and someone wrote this, I think in the midst of like maybe a month ago or so, you know, and it was specifically to queer people, the importance of remembering to check in on those that you consider a part of your network, your circle, your family, because you never know, you just never know, right? And so, but I made a choice not to publicly post like, and it was for a number of factors that I chose not to in the midst of like being sick and healing. One is just the management of responding to everyone. That's a real deal, right? And so that's another thing. If you're not in a relationship partnership, even that and communicating back with people, like in terms of as people want to check in with you, all about a loving kindness, but just managing that became stressful for me. So I had to give myself limits for 2 to 3 hours a day to communicate with people because otherwise, you know, that was completely fatiguing as well and overwhelming. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you found a strategy that worked for you. You are 85% better, and we're so, so grateful to hear that.
Thank you.
I want to ask you another question. We've got maybe about a minute left, but I think it's among the most important. Um, you know, we're not only talking to you as someone who's single, we're not only talking to you as someone who's from who lives in Bed-Stuy, one of the most important neighborhoods in the world, in my opinion. We're not only talking to you as someone who's gay, but we're also talking to you as a Black man. And I think that the racialized disparity of how this pandemic is playing out is among the most horrific aspects of how COVID is devastating communities. And it's revealing the inequalities and injustices that preceded the pandemic are being heightened by the pandemic. And hopefully we will do something about after the pandemic. Because what we do now really matters. And so I just wanted to ask you to speak a little bit about the racialization of COVID.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, so you have communities that were already disenfranchised, you know, based on race and class, right? You know, and then also positions in like wherever you may live. So you also have community bias, right? And so places where people live. And I would say that, you know, of course, those folks in those communities, we see that in Missouri, like all the people that have passed up to a particular point were all Black folk. And so what we know is that this is perniciously like and devastatingly like impacting, you know, communities, Black and brown communities that have already been already disenfranchised when it comes to healthcare access. And so I think that, you know, so between the bias and between the stereotyping that already happens around like, you know, Black people or immigrants are not like taking care of themselves, this is why this happens, right? If we're not like seen as a moment to think about like structurally what we need to do differently when it comes to healthcare access in this country and globally, we are not doing the right kind of work. And like, you know, and I get it, the environmental impact, of course, right, in terms of how this is let up on the earth in some ways in terms of all the, but we also have the impact on people and particularly those already vulnerable and disenfranchised. This is humongous, right? And they're also, the other piece is that they're often the first responders. So they're the people that are still being the nannies. They're the people that are right, you know, and so they're already putting their already like marginal and disenfranchised communities and vulnerable communities are even putting themselves out there to take care of like, you know, to take care of others. And so we owe them this, right, in terms of organizations and those who are at the forefront of political activity and like, you know, pushing forward social justice activism. We must like center our strategies, I believe, around Black and brown people as we move forward in terms of our responses, right? We just must.
I think you've issued a call to action, and I think that's really brilliant. I think it's one that hopefully the donors will hear, the governments will hear, hopefully journalists will also watch this and be reminded of the stories they need to center in this crisis. And I wanna be especially grateful to you for sharing your story and your analysis. You know, OutRight TV has a primarily international audience, and so to hear someone, you know, kind of peeling back the complexities and problems of the U.S., of New York City in this time of crisis, I think it helps to rebut American exceptionalism, right? I mean, everything about this is a rebuttal to that. And my timer is going off, and my colleagues have told me I'm not allowed to talk for as long as I want because apparently it gets too long.
Yeah.
They would let us talk as long as we wanted. I wanna just say again, I'm so happy you're healthy and safe. You were such a like gem and amazing person in this world. You're a former board member, a current donor, a current supporter, a friend, and just an amazing person. Thank you so much, Monroe.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you for all the work that OutRight is doing as well globally to support those impacted by COVID through your grant program and just all the beautiful work that you all have done prior to that. And, you know, it's an honor to be a former board member and a donor to the organization. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Monroe. Everyone, tune into the next episode. I can't promise the next one will be as cute, stylish, and smart as Monroe, but it'll certainly be fabulous and interesting. Bye, everyone. Bye, Monroe. Thank you.
Thank you.